Imagine sitting 28,000 feet above sea level. The wind is screaming at 50 miles per hour, and the temperature has plummeted to minus 20 degrees Celsius. At this altitude, there is only a third of the oxygen available at sea level. Your brain swells, and your body literally begins to consume its own muscles just to stay warm. This is the death zone of Mount Everest. In 2006, veteran climber Lincoln Hall was pronounced dead in this exact spot. His team, out of oxygen and fighting for their own lives, were forced to leave his lifeless body behind on a narrow, icy ledge. But 12 hours later, another team climbing up found him sitting on the edge of a 10,000-foot drop, alive. This is the unbelievable true story of the man who refused to die on the highest peak on Earth. Our story starts on May 25, 2006. Lincoln Hall, a 50-year-old highly experienced Australian mountaineer, had just achieved his lifelong dream. After weeks of grueling climbing, he stood at the summit of Mount Everest. The view was breathtaking, but Everest has a deadly rule: reaching the top is only half the journey. Most deaths on the mountain happen on the way down. As Lincoln began his descent, something went terribly wrong. Deep fatigue set in, not just in his muscles, but in his mind. He began moving incredibly slowly, his coordination failing. He was suffering from extreme high-altitude cerebral edema, a fatal condition where the lack of oxygen causes the brain to swell, leading to confusion, hallucinations, and eventually, death. At 28,000 feet, Lincoln collapsed. He couldn't stand, he couldn't walk, and he began acting erratically. He stripped off his hat and gloves, convinced he was burning up, a terrifying symptom of hypothermia known as paradoxical undressing. His Sherpa guides, desperately trying to save his life, spent hours trying to drag him down the mountain. But at that altitude, dragging a grown man is nearly impossible. You can barely carry your own weight. As the hours passed, the Sherpas themselves began running out of oxygen. They were developing frostbite, and the sun was setting. A massive snowstorm was rolling in. Staying with Lincoln meant they would all die. At 7:20 p.m., the expedition leader made the most agonizing call in mountaineering. He ordered the Sherpas to leave Lincoln behind and save themselves. Lincoln was unresponsive, showing no signs of life. The Sherpas left him on a jagged ridge known as the Mushroom Rock, overlooking an endless drop. They radioed base camp, officially declaring Lincoln Hall dead. His family back in Australia was informed of the tragic news. For the next 12 hours, Lincoln Hall was completely alone in the darkest, coldest, and deadliest place on Earth. No oxygen, no heavy gloves, his jacket unzipped, fully exposed to a brutal Himalayan night. Logically, scientifically, and medically he was dead. But the human body hides secrets that science still cannot fully explain. The next morning, at 7 a.m., another expedition team led by Dan Mazer was pushing for the summit. As they navigated the treacherous, narrow ridge near Mushroom Rock, they saw a flash of color in the snow. As they got closer, they froze in absolute shock. Sitting cross-legged on the edge of a 10,000-foot cliff, with his climbing suit unzipped and no hat or gloves, was Lincoln Hall. He was severely frostbitten, hallucinating, and barely breathing, but he was alive. When the climbers approached him, Lincoln looked up and muttered a sentence that would go down in history. "I imagine you're surprised to see me here." Dan Mazer's team abandoned their summit push immediately. "You don't leave a living man behind." They gave him hot tea, their own oxygen, and radioed base camp. The news sent shockwaves down the mountain. The dead man was alive. A massive, unprecedented rescue operation was launched. Over the next 2 days, teams of Sherpas risked their own lives to bring Lincoln down the treacherous ice falls and steep faces. He had lost the tips of his fingers and toes to severe frostbite, but he survived. Lincoln Hall's survival remains one of the greatest medical mysteries in climbing history. How he survived a night unprotected in the death zone defies every law of human biology. It proves that the will to live is the most powerful force on Earth. If this incredible story of human endurance left you speechless, hit the subscribe button and join Human Limit for more gripping true stories.